Well, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you so much for joining us for the January Teach Climate Network workshop. My name is Seth Spencer. I am the Teach Climate Network coordinator for Climate Generation, a climate change education nonprofit based in Minneapolis, Minnesota, but really doing professional development and education support around climate change throughout North America. I am thrilled to be joined by a bunch of folks tonight, but I'll start by introducing Wendy Stelzer with Wisconsin's K-12 Energy Education Program and Gina Smith with the Wisconsin Center for the Environment, and presenting on building energy detectives using your building as an energy education tool. I am so grateful that they are able to join us tonight. I'll pass it over to them in just a second. But you may know that this is the fifth of our 9 workshop series where we focus on the best practices of climate change education. And that's really because Climate Generation's mission is to ignite and sustain the ability of educators, youth, and communities to act on the systems that perpetuate the climate crisis. And we believe we're going to continue to do this through overcoming science disinformation, really centering anti-racism and systemic equity. And really the focus tonight is personalizing and localizing that climate change action that's happening right in our communities. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Wendy. Thanks so much, everybody.
All right, I'm going to take the reins here. Can everyone see my shared screen? Yes, I got the thumbs up. So welcome to Building Energy Detectives, using your building as an energy education tool. We will be recording tonight at the webinar tonight, as well as I can provide you all with a copy of our slides. So don't feel like you have to take furious notes. They will all be provided to you after the webinar is over. Feel free to drop questions in the chat as we go along. If I see them, I'll try to answer them as we go along, but if not, we'll try to get them at the end of the presentation tonight. To begin our webinar today, KEEP would like to acknowledge the land and water in what is now called Wisconsin. The University of Wisconsin-Stevens Point, where KEEP is located, occupies the ancestral and contemporary lands and waters of the Menominee and Ho-Chunk people. We acknowledge and honor Menominee and Ho-Chunk people who work to sustain these places for many generations. And we invite you to explore the land and waters which you may inhabit by using the link that my coworker is going to drop in the chat. My colleague Gina and I will be presenting today along with Chippewa Falls High School educator Nick Gagnon and his Green Team students, Ellie, Chloe, and Zoe, as well as Emily Drost from Resource Central. My name is Wendy Stelzer, and I am KEEP's Youth and Community Engagement Specialist. I joined KEEP in 2022. Before that, I worked in the UW-Oshkosh Microbiology Department, and before that, I was a high school biology and chemistry teacher. And also, for a short period of time, I wrote curriculum for a local environmental ed charter school. Gina, as well as Nick and his students, and Emily will introduce themselves a bit later in the workshop when their time to present comes up. KEEP is part of the Wisconsin Center for Environmental Education. We are celebrating our 35th anniversary this year. Woohoo! Our mission is to provide leadership and resources to advance education for sustainable human and natural communities. KEEP is a program within the WCEE. The acronym KEEP stands for K-12 Energy Education Program. Our focus is on increasing energy literacy throughout the state of Wisconsin. KEEP is funded specifically for K-12 energy education by 6 of the state's major utilities that are seen on the slide. KEEP's 3 major focus areas are energy concepts, renewable energy, and energy conservation. Under those 3 umbrellas, we provide lessons, activities, and resources for educators, students, and the community. We provide professional development for both formal and non-formal educators, as well as networking and consultation. Infused in all of these are climate change, DEI initiatives, and energy careers and education. So our agenda for tonight. First off, I'm going to talk a little bit about why energy conservation is an important climate solution, and then move on to an overview of ways you and your students can investigate and learn more about energy and energy conservation in your own buildings. Then we'll hear a case study from Wisconsin's own Chippewa Falls High School from Nick Gagnon and his Green Team students. Then I'll pass it over to a colleague at the WCEE, Gina Smith, and she is going to share her beautifully crafted and brand spanking new building energy detective lessons that she created. And wrapping it up, we will hear from Emily Drost. She is from Resource Central, and she can tell you how your school can participate in the Renew Our Schools program. So I begin most of KEEP's student, community, and professional development events by asking participants for a show of hands. It's a little bit hard in virtual world, but we can try it. So you can virtually raise your hand or not. I ask participants to raise their hands if they have used energy today. I have. More specifically, I asked them to raise their hand if they have used electricity in some way today. Have they plugged something in or flipped a switch to turn something on? This is just a great way to get everyone comfortable with raising their hand and participating, because everyone from kindergartners all the way up to educators can usually supply lots of answers to how they have used electricity today. And then I go on from there, thank you, and ask them some of the ways that they have used electricity. And of course, I get a variety of different answers. And if somebody is kind of shy and not raising their hand, I kind of give them a little warning and say, if your hand's not raised, I may take you aside later and talk to you, because I want to know about your lifestyle and how you don't use electricity so far today. So that's just a little fun way to get, I don't know, kids especially more ready to talk and share with me as I present. I go on to ask, what are the different ways that electricity can be generated? You can think about this both in your own state and in the US as a whole. And if you wouldn't mind dropping some of those ways that electricity can be generated in the chat, I would love that. So anyone have any ideas how electricity can be generated? Oh, I see some things. We got hydroelectric. Yeah, we know about that in Wisconsin. Got a lot of those on our rivers. Geothermal, coal, yes, wind, solar. Right, you guys are coming up with a lot of great answers. And students usually can do this too. And wind too from, yeah, it's just taken. Yes, that is true. So I'm going to share with you. I think you got most of them, by the way. Good job. This is data from the U.S. Energy Information Administration. My colleague can throw this link in the chat if you're interested where this data comes from. As you can see, well over half, about 60% of the electricity generated in the US comes from burning fossil fuel. You can see that the coal in black and the red, the methane are fossil fuels that are used to generate electricity. And of course, we know that when we burn fossil fuels, that releases carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, and this contributes to global warming. So it is an issue. In fact, 25% of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere are generated by electricity production. This graphic is from Project Drawdown. Some of you educators may be familiar with this graphic and Project Drawdown. This is a great resource for talking to students, talking with students, because we love it at KEEP and at the WCE because it focuses a lot on climate solutions, which we really like when talking with students. If you're not familiar with your graphic, let's take a look at it now. On the left-hand side, you see a lot of, you see our greenhouse gas sources. On the right-hand side, you see our greenhouse gas sinks. You can see that there are a lot more rainbow arcs going up on the left than there are coming down on the right. This is, the whole imbalance that's happening in our atmosphere right now. But again, looking at this, you see 25%, which is a big chunk of those greenhouse gases coming from electricity production, and another 6% coming from buildings. So you can see talking about electricity and energy conservation are really important as they relate to climate change. All right. I believe a great way to learn about energy, electricity, and how to conserve it, and subsequently how to reduce your carbon footprint, is by using your own spaces, your own buildings, as teaching tools. In these pictures, you can see students learning about energy in their learning spaces. So let's talk a little bit about that. Let's talk about what these kids are doing and what that looks like. You can see students and educators learning about the energy systems that run their buildings, their HVAC systems, their lighting, water heating, as well as the appliances that they use on a daily basis. You can see the in-house field trip taking place in the middle of the screen. That's a school's own facilities room. So they took an in-house field trip to their own facilities room. The kids get, kind of think this is cool. They get to go behind doors that no one else gets to go behind. And that's fun for them. Students and educators can talk to people that manage the energy systems in their buildings. They talk to facility and energy managers, to the custodians in buildings and grounds. These are the great on-site resources that know the ins and outs of their buildings. They know the upgrades that have been done to their buildings as far as energy efficiency, and they know what's coming in the future. Students and educators can audit the spaces that they're in. So students are very capable of conducting an energy audit in at least 3 areas of energy consumption, one of which is lighting. Not only looking at the types of lighting, LED versus fluorescent, but also using a device called a light meter for looking at actual lighting levels. So many of our school spaces are overlit. And if you look at that picture in the bottom left-hand corner, you can see those are some Evansville High School students on a de-lamping project. They found that their hallways were way overlit. And they did not have fancy dimmer switches, or they weren't able to shut down just banks of lights. So they actually physically went in and just unscrewed light bulbs. They did this on a Friday afternoon, and everyone came back on a Monday, and no one even noticed it was a little bit dimmer. And they did some calculations and figured that it was saving their school district about $800 a year in electricity costs. So it saved them money, and it reduced their school's carbon footprint, and it was a huge win. Another area for auditing that students can look at is temperature. They can use an infrared thermometer or even a camera to detect variances in temperatures throughout a building, or even a room, to help determine if spaces need more insulation, or the HVAC needs to be tweaked, or if individual thermostats need to be modified. And you can see students as young as 2nd graders up there in the right-hand corner. Those are 2nd graders from Chippewa Falls using an infrared thermometer to practice taking temperatures around their room. So these tools are very easy to use and accessible. Another area are appliances. Students can use what's a device called a watt meter to detect vampire loads on appliances. So sometimes appliances consume electricity when they're plugged in, but not turned on. And so you can use a watt meter to identify these appliances and solve that problem so they don't do that. As well as just start conversations about those really high consuming appliances and when to run them in the school day. For example, like kilns, for example, in art rooms, take up consume a lot of electricity. And lastly, students and educators can continually monitor their spaces. It's not just a one and done type of activity. In this center kind of bottom picture, you see data from an electricity data logger. It's a device that's attached to a school's electric utility meter that measures real-time kWh electricity consumption in a space and the corresponding money the cost for that consumption. So students, educators, administrators, taxpayers can all log in and see that data live anytime, anywhere. And cooler yet is if the school has solar, so they can see consumption and production at the same time. In Wisconsin, we have some schools that take part in a program called the Renew Our Schools Energy Conservation Program. And this program incorporates all of these activities that I just talked about. It's really cool. We love it. The program is available nationwide, but it can look just slightly different from state to state. The program is managed by a nonprofit called Resource Central out of Colorado. And in Wisconsin, Resource Central and Renew Our Schools partners with KEEP as well as Focus on Energy. We provide financial and resource support to Wisconsin enrolled schools. So schools can usually enroll at no cost. We at KEEP provide the energy audit tools for them. I go to each school and provide a site visit. I help the teachers and students learn how to use the audit tools. I give them some tips and tricks on how to perform an energy audit. And my, I see the link. Thank you, Gina, for putting that in the chat. There's the link to our energy audit best practices. If you're interested in doing a energy audit in your space, there's some tips and tricks to get you started. All right. So a little bit more about Renew Our Schools and what it looks like in Wisconsin. It's structured as a 6-week competition where schools can earn points for energy actions, like completing an energy audit in their school, as well as the percent they are able to decrease their consumption, which is measured by their data logger that's installed on their utility meter. We find in Wisconsin that schools can decrease their consumption by about 4%, which is pretty significant. The ultimate goal for students is to generate an energy policy for their school that enables them to reduce their energy consumption and decrease their school's carbon footprint. All right, in Wisconsin, we have a little bit of extra carrot. We provide schools, winning schools with a little cash prize. It's usually $1,500 to $2,500 to use to further reduce their school's carbon footprint. So it gives them sort of another project to do after they get that energy audit done, which is very fun. Schools get to keep the electricity data logger and the energy audit tools. So some data from our Wisconsin Spring 2024 competition. We had 10 schools participate. Together, they saved just over 100,000 kWh of electricity over the course of the competition. Using the EPA greenhouse gas equivalency calculator, that equates to about just over 165,000 pounds of carbon dioxide prevented from going into the atmosphere. That's a lot. So those schools can be super proud of all their work. The EPA calculator, if you guys don't know, that's a super fun tool. Gina just stuck that in the link for you guys to play with. It converts, it shows a lot of equivalencies. One of the fun ones that students always like is the smartphones charged. So these 10 schools were able to save enough electricity that would charge almost 5 million cell phones. So they always like learning about that one. To date, almost 50 Wisconsin schools have participated in Renew Our Schools. Many schools compete more than once. You can read more about them using the link in the chat. But better yet, you can listen to one of them right now because we have one of those schools with us tonight. I'm going to turn it over now to Chippewa Falls High School students and educator. So we have Nick Gagnon is the educator and green team advisor, and Ellie, Chloe, and Zoe are the green team students, and they're going to share with you how they use their school and their community to learn about energy and energy conservation.
All right, thank you, Wendy. I'm Nick Gagnon. I'm a high school instructor, science instructor at Chippewa Falls, and I'm also our academic chair. And I get the the privilege here to work with our green team. So I'm going to kind of fill you in a little bit about how KEEP has really helped us and sort of guided us from the beginning until where we are today. And then I'll have the girls here explain the project that they did with the Renew Our School competition. So I guess for those of you out there that don't know where Chippewa Falls is, there's a map here of Wisconsin. We're northwest Wisconsin. Our high school is about a little under 1,500 students. And I guess we're kind of your stereotypical, northern Wisconsin school, I guess in a lot of ways. So it kind of gives you a little breakdown of our school and our community partnerships that we have out there as well. You can go to the next slide, Wendy. Regina, I guess I'm not sure who's advancing. So yeah, a little bit of history here and how UW-Stevens Point and KEEP has really got us to where we are today. So in 2019, 2020, I was teaching a remote pilot class. So we have a drones class here at the high school. And I had a group of seniors that had finished their projects early. And I just happened to get an email that came in that said, apply for this KEEP mini grant. And I told my seniors, I'm like, hey, why don't you fill out this grant application and see what happens. So anyway, long story short, they filled out an application through KEEP. I think it was for one of your mini grants, and they got it. And that was kind of the beginning of this I guess long journey where some very great things here have happened for our students at Chippewa Falls. So at that time, the seniors that had written the grant used that money and put it towards a thermal imaging drone. And then those seniors graduated. So it was actually the spring of their senior year. The following year, a group of sophomores, 3 of them, formed our first official green team here at the high school. And that was Cam, Maddie, and Bella. And they basically, with the help of KEEP, got to choose their project. And our high school allowed them to get credit for their work on the green team. And they got credit for 2 years worth of work. So they were basically with me for half of a school year, their entire junior year, and half of a school year, their entire senior year. And they got to work on whatever they wanted to. And so they chose to go after some big grant money while they were working. They chose to do some stuff with KEEP. And I kind of have a list of what they had done in that time. So they had requested, lighting was one of the things that KEEP had helped direct us to. They wrote a huge grant for $1 million to replace all the lighting in our high school. They didn't get that grant. That was a great effort. Then their senior year, they wrote another grant for some solar panels at a local community shelter, which they ended up getting that grant. That's actually, they've been installed at this time. And then Green Team 2.0 right now, or so the second, Chloe, Zoe, and Ellie are working with us. And they've done, actually, I'll let them tell you a little bit about their projects as well, but they've done some pretty amazing things as well as winning the Renew Our Schools competition that KEEP sponsors. You can go to the next slide here, Wendy, or Gina, I guess I'm not sure who's clicking. Yeah, this is one of the projects. We don't have to play the video, but this was the first KEEP project that we did with them, which was using the thermal imaging cameras to map all the district buildings for heat loss. So essentially, we helped our facilities director come up with a map of areas that needed insulation by using the drones from the air, so we could see the roofs, as well as the thermal imaging cameras from the ground. So that was kind of a pretty nice project that KEEP had helped us with. If you can go to the next slide. And then we had talked about how we're using our building as a teaching tool. And so part of that grant money too, we use towards putting air quality monitors throughout our building. So we have, they're called Sense air quality monitors. I could put the link to those, but they allow us to track a bunch of different things in the air, including radon. You can see this particular graph down in the math department. Every weekend when our air handling units turn off, the radon spikes, which isn't great, but then it goes back down once the air handling units are on. So that's one area that our district didn't even know was a problem until we were able to sort of start monitoring that. And then Gina, and I'm sorry, Wendy had talked about using monitoring as well for energy through the portfolio manager and the Energy Star stuff. And then the other thing KEEP did to us or helped us is, you can click to the next slide, sorry, was they put on professional development. And so my entire science department now has been trained through KEEP down in Madison on how to install solar panels. So everybody in the department is solar panel trained as well. Okay, next slide. And this is more of the HOPE project. I guess we could skip to the next one here. That was the final outcome. And then on to the current project, or the last project here, is the Renew Our Schools, which is the one that the Green Team 2.0 has worked on. So I'll let the girls take it over from here. I guess, Chloe, if you want to go.
Yeah, so we competed in the Renew Our School Challenge, and we were actually the youngest group to participate in it. And we had 67 second graders, which was among like 3 classes. And it was during our class time, so we would go into, it was at Hillcrest Elementary School, which is an elementary school right across the street from us. And who participated in it? It was during the period where our first green team was still here. So it was like our first step into becoming the second green team. And we also had our environmental club help us, which is a club that we help do environmental projects with. So, and it was really cool to see how impactful such a small challenge can have on students. And you can go to the next slide. Thank you. So what we would do when we would go over there during those weeks were teach lessons. So the first thing that we set up at the beginning of the challenge was the e-gauge to show how much energy the school used. So one of the things that we did with the students were that there were a bunch of sheets of paper of different appliances in the house, like a hair dryer or an Xbox. And then we had the students try to predict what used the most energy and what used the least amount of energy to get a first step in the concept of energy. So then after we did trial and error, we explained that appliances that use the most heat use the most energy. So it was cool for them to understand that. And then the next thing that we did with the information was that we brainstormed ideas on how to decrease the amount of energy in the classroom. So students would go around their classroom and look at things that used energy, like the lights and other things around the classroom, in which we with KEEP use kilowatt meters, which would say how much energy an appliance would use. So that was another lesson that we did, is that we would use the kilowatt meters and go around the classroom, and then the students would give us what to plug it into. We'd have them predict how much energy it would use, and then we would turn it on, so then they would get the concept of how much energy things would use. So we recorded how much lights would use, smart boards, and it was really cool on a hands-on experiment. We had students record the data to understand it. And then what we did with that information is that in another lesson had the students create posters in their classes and competed with who had the best poster to put the information to the rest of the school. So one of the posters ideas was turn off lights when not using them. And it was cool to see younger students have a hands-on experience with that. So with that, putting it around the school and getting the other students around the school to understand kind of energy, there was a power down hour in our school. So basically teachers would have students go around the classroom and turn off all the lights, and they'd go outside to see how much energy they could decrease. And then when we looked at the e-gauge, it brought it down quite a bit. But with more hands-on experiences during it, there's even a part where we went to we had Corey do a virtual solar farm. So he explained how solar panels worked and how they created energy. And as mentioned earlier, they went to the boiler room to see how the water would heat up in their school, which was, so Ellie will explain what the outcome of Renew Our School. So we'll be on the next slide.
Okay, good, next slide. Oh, one more slide actually, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, so during the Renew Our Schools energy competition, we also were informed of the mini grant. And when we were over there teaching the lessons one day using the kilowatt meters, the kids decided that one of their things was going to be to plug in the smart boards in each of the rooms. And when we plugged them in and when they were turned off on the idle mode, we found out that they consume about 46 watts of energy, and they run for about 16 hours a day when we're not in school. And after calculating this, because that seems like a pretty big number, it costs Hillcrest about $800 a year to run these every day on idle. So then to figure out how to fix it, we came up with the idea of getting smart strips, which are up on the board there. And I also have one to demo. But they have a master outlet and then some control outlets. And it connects to the desktop computer so that when you shut that off at the end of the day, your smartboard will completely power down as well. So the main purpose of this was for the smartboards, but additionally, you could use it for other electronics too. And then in order to get these, that's when we connected with Keep. And the first step was the application, which was a pretty easy process. And then you meet with them in like an overview meeting and then move on to the actual grant writing, which you're given a pretty big window for it. And it's a very like clear and smooth process. And you do check-ins with Keep along the way, and they are awesome at answering any questions and helping you out through that. It makes it super easy and smooth, and it's a great process. And then finally, we were awarded the $700 for it. Our next steps were, once we were given the money, we made an instructional video for all of the teachers at Hillcrest so that if they had any like other questions, they could watch that whenever they needed to. And then after about 2 weeks, we went over to Hillcrest and made sure they were all set up and working properly and answered any questions that the teachers had. And then our final savings for that, it reduces about 7,400 pounds of carbon dioxide every year. And over a decade will save Hillcrest Elementary School $8,000. If you want to go to the next slide. And then back to the Renor Schools competition, the result from that was the $2,000, but not only that, the kids learned so much from it, and they had such a blast. They had the greatest ideas and would always talk about how they made differences at home too with their energy consumption. And then for us as a green team, it was also a great experience writing the mini grant, because it introduced us to grant writing, and the competition and Smart Strips let us make a difference in our school community, which was awesome.
Yeah, and continuing with what Ellie said, by getting the $2,000 from the Renew Our Schools energy competition, you can switch the slide too. And we were able to think of our own project, what we wanted to do with the solar panels. So us as a group, we got reached out to by One Energy, which is a solar panel company. And we wanted to show like something visible to our community of like our school's commitment to energy savings. So we wanted to get like solar panels for our high school, and One Energy, after talking to them, ended up donating us a 12-panel solar system to our school because of our work in energy conservation. And then we were able to install this solar panel system, which is originally $27,000. Through the One Energy company, and then we were able to install it through the money that we earned through the Renew Our Schools energy competition. And if you move to the next slide. So this actually just got installed recently at our school, and like I said earlier, we really liked the opportunity to show our school's commitment to energy savings. And we also are going to use a solar panel system in science classes and ways to learn about energy conservation like in a hands-on way. So we were very excited about that. And then if you move to the next slide. Also, along with the solar panels that we got installed, we got inspired by the Renew Our Schools competition, and we ended up writing another grant, the Anne Marine grant, and we received $1,400 in energy kits and to put more energy conservation like areas of learning into our school. And another really big part of the grant money that we put towards is we haven't gotten it yet because we just received the grant money, but we're also getting a TV to put the energy savings like as a visible representation in our school in an entryway. And we thought this would be a cool opportunity for high school students to see the big impact of the solar panels and how much energy they're saving. And moving on to what we did with the rest of the money from the Anne Marie grant, we put those towards the energy kits, as I was talking about. And we were inspired by doing the projects with the second graders because we really enjoyed teaching them, and we were inspired by how motivated such young kids were to reduce energy. So we got different things like we used in the Renew Our Schools competition, such as kilowatt meters, light meters, hand crank generators, and thermal imaging cameras as shown there. And not only is our environmental club and our green team going to continue using these different devices to teach about energy, but we're also going to apply everything we learned to a local youth camp in our community called Camp Nawakwa to apply similar lessons to how we learned them in Renew Our Schools to a wider community. And overall, we really enjoyed this experience because it inspired us to write future grants, as well as keep making impacts in our community and show community members how much of an impact young students can make, or how intelligent, like even second graders can be to offset energy. And I will pass this on to Gina to kind of talk more about the curriculum.
Thank you. And just a shout out to Nick and the team for all their efforts throughout the past couple of years on their green team with the Renew Our Schools, but even more so for engaging those younger learners in energy education and energy projects, and helping create even a stronger presence for energy in their community. So I'm Gina Smith, and during this part of the session, I'm going to talk about some resources we have for educators to use in the classroom to engage students in some of the background information and learning that's connected to these tools and the processes that students participate in the Renew Our Schools program. I am the resource specialist that focuses on lessons and activities for the Wisconsin Center for Environmental Education, which includes the KEEP Energy Education Program and then LEAF, our forestry education program. I've been with the center since 2021, and prior to that, I had about 20 years of teaching in the classroom, mostly at the middle school level. And my last 10 years of teaching, it was in interdisciplinary thematic units. And so a lot of the things that we do at KEEP are exciting to me because it's things that I wanted to do in my classroom and sometimes had the resources for and sometimes did not. So I'm going to talk about our Building Energy Detectives series of lessons over the next few slides. And this is just kind of the overview there. So Wendy, if you want to advance to the next slide, we'll go into the specifics of each aspect of these. So the biggest thing that I would like to share first about the lessons is that they're phenomenon-based and student-driven. And the one thing that is exciting about this is it links to the NGSS standards, which teachers need to teach to begin with, but it's a great way to have students drive the learning of those standards, which is sometimes challenging to implement. And so the link in the chat that Wendy's sharing introduces you to the first lesson that doesn't use any of the tools, but just asks students the question. And I see on my screen, the essential question is not showing up, so I'm just going to read that for you. But the essential question is, what energy actions can I take at school, at home? Oh, it's showing now. There must have been a hidden click there that was needed. But what energy actions can I take at school, at home, and in my community to create a more sustainable future? And so before they begin doing any explorations, before you give them any instructions, they're talking about what it means to have a sustainable future, what needs to contribute to that, and they just, jot down all those random ideas that they might have. Then they get together with groups and start seeing that there's maybe some categories that these questions can be lumped into. And while they might have, questions that are related to things that aren't energy, you can put those on the board, but you can take and focus them in on this energy questions and kind of group them. And, hopefully based on the Renew Our Schools presentation you've already seen, they'll come up with some that have to do with electricity, related to lighting, related to things that we plug in, maybe even related to heating and cooling our buildings and things like that. And so you let students drive that process of, this is what we need to learn about in order to make these decisions that help us lead to a sustainable future. And so the initial lesson just engages them in those conversations and lets them kind of create a plan for moving forward. And then once they have that plan, looking on the next slide, they can engage in the lessons, and we'll share links to the lessons, but they'll also be linked in this slideshow that you'll get a copy of later. So you don't need to worry about downloading them all right now or opening them all right now. But all the lessons are created in a 5E format. So they go through those engage, explore, explain, elaborate, evaluate phases. And they're also in Google. And so every resource you can download, make your own copy, and tweak it to meet the needs of you and your students. They are free. We never charge any fees associated with them. You can share them, and you could even download the templates and use them for lessons other than energy lessons if you like them and they work for you. But each piece has its own series of slides that help you guide your students through the investigation. They also have links to student documents that students can fill in and complete as they're participating in the lessons, and links to an educator guide that provide you with a little additional background information and correct answers to the questions so that you don't have to guess if you don't happen to know the answers. In each of the Google slideshows, there is a link to a career related to the topic that's being covered, or just related to energy efficiency or electricity generation in general. And then there's also a climate connection slide. And so in this series of lessons, a lot of our climate connection slides are related to the En-ROADS simulator, where educators can show students or even give students the link to it, and they can click on that and see, oh, if I use energy efficiency practices, how does this change our outlook for climate change? And then, as Wendy shared in her presentation, we also link to the EPA equivalency calculator so that students can look at, okay, if I take these actions and I calculate how many kilowatt hours I'm reducing my electricity consumption by, what am I saving? How is that impacting our planet? And so it really helps students understand that we're not just doing this for financial reasons. That a lot of times gets your school district buy-in, but that we're doing these for our planetary reasons and, to help with that sustainable future. I think we covered everything in there. The Google resources are in a Google folder. So, you can make a copy of the whole folder or individual documents and go about using them as you wish. Taking a look at the next slide, I'll talk a little bit about the individual energy detective lessons. So there's 4 lessons, one that goes with each of the tools that's part of the energy audit kit. And they all serve one of those purposes related to that Renew Our Schools competition. And so lessons 1 and 2 are the only ones that really need to occur in sequence. So if your students are like, hey, we really need to know what is going on with our lights, you can jump in and do that lesson first. We want students to drive this phenomenon-based learning as much as possible. But you don't want to do the vampire load one before students understand what a watt meter is and how much electricity is being used by the different appliances. Within each of these lessons, all of the resources that I had mentioned on the previous slide are included. And so you have the student documents, the slideshows, the educator guide, but they let the students practice using the tool in a space that you've already looked at yourself, like it's your classroom or a space very near your classroom. And so students build their confidence and they know how to use the tool, understand the data that they're getting from the tool, and start to think about, what can I do to lower this electricity usage, or what can I do, or what questions would I want to examine further if I continued on this? And we get to that in the final lesson down the road. But it's kind of this practice trial run, so that if you want to click on the next slide, Wendy, at the end of the exploration, they can do a whole school-wide energy audit and then create an energy action plan. And so lesson 5, students break down into groups and they each have a specific location in the building. They, again, because we want it to be student driven, the start of lesson 5 is having students say, well, where should we audit this building? Where do we think the most energy is being used in our building? And they identify those locations, and then they each take a different one that they look at. They design the questions that they're going to ask about their space, determine which tools they're going to need in that space. In the hallway, there might not be as many things plugged in, so they might really be focusing in on that lighting and, especially entryways, the doors, do they close all the time? Are they propped and things like that? Whereas a classroom is going to take into consideration all those appliances that are being used. Once they conduct their energy audit, they create a report that shares their results. But then also go that step further and come up with their action plan. And there's on the screen here just a little excerpt of the slide that's shared before students create that plan. So the teacher, can ask them, what are the concerns that conducting this audit generated? What could your action be? Who would be involved? Why is this going to work? And then they can use those tools from the EPA greenhouse gas equivalencies calculator, to look at that. They could look at school electric bills. If they're participating in Renew Our Schools, they could use their e-gauge data and information to help them, look at their impacts on it. And then we also want to have them find some evidence to support that their ideas might work. And so that evidence could come from outside sources if your students are, internet savvy and good at researching that, or you could get them a list of, resources that they could use to, provide that evidence. But that helps with some of those English language arts skills in supporting what you do with evidence and knowing how to cite that correctly. And then looking at the last slide or the next slide. Oh, I guess I was finished with that. I thought I had one more slide, but evidently I don't. If you have any questions, we can answer those at the end. But I do want to turn it over to Emily Drost, who is a program manager of the Renew Our Schools program, and she's going to share about that.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me today. As Gina said, I am the program manager for Renew Our Schools. We are a humble not-for-profit based out of Boulder, Colorado, and we work with schools all across the country to implement the Renew Our Schools program. If you've been inspired today to give our program a try, we do have a competition coming up in just about a week that would be a great fit for most on this call. We call that our Spark competition. And that is for schools that don't have energy monitors already installed. One of the really great things about our program and why we've been so successful in Wisconsin specifically is our partnership with Keep and Focus on Energy, where we're able to offer discounted and even free participation in our program. And our everything that we do with them, and they supplement a lot of what we do with their additional resources that Gina was just walking us through, which we absolutely love and adore. Next slide, please. This is just some of our upcoming competitions. I want you to know that these are open to everyone. And if you get on our site and you're like, gosh, I don't know what to do, or I don't know that I can afford this, I don't know that my school or administration will support this, don't hesitate to reach out. There's lots of contact information on there. Shoot me a note. We have scholarships that we make available to schools that are needed. in order to get going and get participating in this. And we just love hearing stories like the one that we heard today from our students who just take everything to the next level. And I absolutely adore our high schoolers that are helping our second graders. That makes me so happy because I think that just takes the learning to the next level for the kids when they have somebody that they can relate more closely to. So thank you, ladies, for doing that. And thank you, Nick, for facilitating that. And everyone else, thank you for having us involved today. I think I'm supposed to hand it back to Wendy, but I think you're muted, Wendy.
Sorry about that, Emily. I was chatting away and nobody was hearing me. Yes. Thank you, Emily, for all that great information on how your school, whether you're in any state across the country, can participate in Renew Our Schools. Thank you to WCEE's very own Gina Smith. And of course, a big, huge thank you to Nick and Ellie, Chloe, and Zoe for being with us tonight and just explaining so eloquently and wonderfully how they used energy conservation in their community. It's pretty amazing that these are high school students. Just fabulous. We can open it up for questions. If you have any questions of any of us, please go ahead and speak up or put them in the chat if you want to. We can kind of look through that. That would be fabulous.
And for those of you who aren't monitoring the chat, I did remember what I thought I had an additional slide about, and I put a note there. But because we know that some of the educators in Wisconsin work in non-formal settings and want to engage learners in this, there in the educator guide for the Building Energy Detectives lessons, there are tips for using this for home energy audits. That would be probably more applicable to those types of settings. And those would also work if you are working with virtual learners or homeschool learners as well.
With the, not only like the libraries having the watt meters and things like that, another place you might want to look, and I've grabbed like GPS units for geocaching and stuff, and the coring things for soil samples, is check out, at least in Wisconsin, your UW County Extension Office. They might have some of the same toys, and it might be closer and faster. In case everybody wants the cool stuff all at once.
And I'll just read out a question that came up earlier for those who might be watching the recording, but has KEEP considered doing a pre or post test related to energy education or knowledge to demonstrate how a green team like the one in Chippewa Falls has increased learning for high school or elementary students?
Oh, that's a good question. We have not implemented pre and post tests, but I know that some of our, we have had AP classes that have participated in the past, and some teachers have shared their AP scores related to energy and the scientific method, and they found that their scores in those areas were higher than average. So I'm suspecting that it would yield pretty good results.
Can I jump in on that, Wendy?
Yeah.
Through our partnership with you all, that's something that we've been looking at implementing with our competition. The trick that we're working on identifying is how do you hit all age groups, because it is a K through 12 program. And so, you know, what you're going to be, the types of questions you can ask a AP science teacher versus a second, or a science student versus a second grader is very different. But we do have a member of our team that's working on putting something together for that, so we can more definitively say that there has been an increase in learning.
Any other questions out there?
Well, thank you, Zoe, Chloe, Ellie, Nick, Wendy, Emily, and Gina, so much for taking the time to share all of this amazing program that you're all doing throughout the state and throughout the country. We really appreciate it. And just a reminder that the workshop was recorded, and we will be sharing the slide deck and all the resources in a follow-up email, hopefully in the next couple days. As I mentioned, this is the 5th workshop. Our 6th workshop will be on February 15th. I'll share the link, but of course that will be in a follow-up email. And it will be on making climate science matter, diving into the 5th National Climate Assessment and really understanding what can we do with these big national reports that come out on how to connect climate change education, climate literacy back into the schools. Thank you so much, everybody. I will stick on, but I'm going to stop the recording, and I hope everybody has a wonderful afternoon and evening.